levels 100%. Shalom, good evening from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in New York State in 1981, now celebrating our 43rd year. Today is Wednesday, December 18th, 2024, in the Gregorian calendar. And since it is after nightfall, it is the 18th day of the 9th Israelite Hebrew month of Kislev in the Hebrew Israelite calendar, Hebrew Israelite New Year 5785. Welcome to episode 30 of our monthly seminar entitled Ancient Roots, Mothering Roots, Nettles, and Sage. The Madam Co-Chairs of the program are three mighty women of the God of Israel in alphabetical order. Mrs. J. Rivkah Asoulin, living now with her family in the Lower Galilee in the land of Israel. Mrs. Chava Dagan, living with her family in the northern Negev in the land of Israel. And Mrs. Gilla Weiss, living in Florida in the United States of God of Israel, bless America. And what a privilege it is to host this program, which deals with healing the whole world urgently, desperately needs. It always needed, now it needs a lot more. And what a year we've had since a year ago. We've had so many open miracles and victories that a week from tomorrow night, when we have the first night of Hanukkah, there are always miracles to celebrate, but they're becoming more and more open. So people who may not see that everything's miraculous see, well, this is certainly very unusual. And next week on Wednesday night, at her own request, Our Lady Roseanne Barr will give her annual Hanukkah address, not on the 8th night of Hanukkah, not on the first night. She wants it the night before the evening of December 25th, which happens to be the end of Christmas Day, which is December 25th. So Our Lady Roseanne will be speaking to us, and what a year it's been. Hopefully, we will see an inauguration on January 20th without a nuclear war, whatever's engineered. President Trump will come in. Roseanne has always been by his side, as those of you who follow her work knows, consistently. So we welcome our live studio audience, really panelists, friends and colleagues of Rivkah and Gilla and Chava from, I don't know where they're from, but I assume the United States, Israel, and perhaps other countries. And now, without further ado, yes, please support our work. You'll find the links below for these three lovely ladies' works and yours truly's. Without further ado, let me hand over the mic to Chava, Gilla, and Rivkah for another illuminating program, our last for Gregorian calendar year 2024. Ladies, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Lo Aryeh, Lion for Our People. I will look forward to tuning in to Roseanne. I just think she's such a special, incredible representative of the Jewish people and has paved a visionary path. So really for all of us women and all Jews. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy because I don't have any sirens happening. I don't have any booms happening. The insane plane situation is happening usually, not during these hours. And it has been such a relief for myself and my family. There are occasional booms and things going on, but not like it was. So we are absolutely loving a functional ceasefire, and hope that there can be peace very, very soon for the land of Israel and really for all humanity, for all people. And happy Hanukkah. We don't exactly have a Hanukkah show per se today, but today I think we have a really important foundational show. We're going back to our ancient roots of herbal medicine, a gift from the divine, a gift from Hashem, a gift from the creative divine energy to us. medicine that grows straight from the ground, wholesome medicine tailor-made to assimilate in our bodies in a perfect way, a full spectrum, perfect way. And when when we were thinking about this idea, we were kicking around kind of the thought of what happens when the poop hits the fan, basically. What happens when people are needing to heal? This is something we've looked at since the beginning of COVID, but there's no access to the internet. Right now, so many people rely on, like, let me look this up, let me get on the internet, or let me call an herbalist friend who knows, or, call an herbalist. If you don't have the phone, if you don't have the internet, if things get to the point, be it zombie apocalypse or globalist agenda, where we don't have access to those things that we're accustomed to, can we use herbal medicine? Because you may not have access to anything else. And the answer is yes. And so the idea here was just to kind of give everyone the foundational thinking around herbs, around approaching herbs. How do you, from scratch, approach an herb or approach herbal medicine when you're not an herbalist? You don't know anything, you don't have anything. What can you do to start utilizing herbal medicine for yourself and your family? And of course, obviously, do it now when you do have the conveniences of modern life. Start today. But if you don't, I hope that you'll remember these words or this episode today so that you'll know step by step what you can do to try and get some help. And there's nothing more awful than being secluded without internet, without electricity, without anything, and have a sick child or a sick parent or a sick loved one. And no way to heal them, no access to doctors or medicine or anything like that. Really, 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 this is a life or death skill. So the first thing I want to talk about is identifying the herb. So a lot of herbalists, myself included, got into herbal medicine by looking at these herbal tomes, these herbal books, and seeing what does what. This herb, say chamomile, is good for tummy aches or relaxation or stress or whatever it is. And then what I would do is I would go to my local herb shop or herbal provider and purchase chamomile and start using it, make a tea out of it, and see if it works. But I don't think when the poop hits the fan, we're not going to have access to these herbal stores. We're not going to have access to the herbs that have been identified for us and provided to us. We need to have a framework for how to go out in nature, walk out your front door. And it doesn't matter where you live. If you're in a major city, if you live in an apartment building, it doesn't matter. The wild weeds grow everywhere, everywhere. So all you need really is to have a plant identification book in your library at home that you can use to begin. And find an herbal book that covers your region, covers the weeds in your region, your bioregion, because obviously the plants that grow, say, where Gilla is in Florida are not the same that grow in the Negev where Chava is, or in the Galilee where I am. So you'll want that. And when you walk outside your door and you see a plant, you start with your first source, which is your herbal or your plant identification book, and you kind of look it up, figure out how to use it in advance. But don't stop there. You're going to need at least 3 different sources to cross-reference in order to know that you have the right plant. But Rivkah, why? I have an herbal ID plant book or a plant ID book. Why do I need 2 other sources besides that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because there are many plants that can be easily misidentified or poisonous lookalikes, which you don't want. Now, I will give you a personal story and then pass it on to my esteemed colleagues, Chava and Gilla, after I thoroughly embarrass myself. But it's got to be done, and it's got to be done with the plant Usnea. I love telling this story because I totally messed up. I was in Florida and I was looking for Usnea And I understood that usnea is this kind of mossy looking thing that hangs from the trees, and it's called old man's beard, and it's got all these different common names. And I identified a plant growing on the tree, hanging from the tree, that was common name was old man's beard, and it was looking, hanging down, whatever it was. And I was like, okay, this has got to be it. And so I took some cursory look. Even me, who always looks up at least three sources, I did not, because I was on a family vacation and I was busy and I had an urgent situation where one of my children had put his hand into a hornet's nest and was stung everywhere all over the place. So this wasn't the time for three different sources. It wasn't the time for anything else. I just went and cursory glance. Okay, there we go. This is it. Chewed it up, made a spit poultice, which we'll cover in a bit, put it on my son's wounds. And thank God, thank God, thank God, the plant that I chewed up was not poisonous, but it was a misidentification. It was Spanish moss, which is not usnea. And so after that, I got schooled by my herbalist friends on how to really identify usnea, which, you pull it apart and it's got this kind of core in the center and whatever but the point is that even somebody who's been working with plants and knows better and should have known better can be fooled. And being fooled with Spanish moss was really no big deal. But if I had been fooled with, say, oleander, I could have been dead. So at least three sources, four sources, five sources, 10 sources, even better. If you've got the time, do it. But try to identify the plants in your area and look up these other sources while you do have access to the internet, or get three different plant ID books or whatever it is, or get an app or get whatever, but something that you can use when there's no internet or there's no electricity, which would be hard copy books on your bookshelf. If you have at least three of them, that would be ideal. And do it now. Start looking around in your area, because when the poop hits the fan, the plants that were growing in your area today will very likely still be growing in your area then. So you'll already have a head start. You already kind of know where to go and how to move quickly. So I'm going to pass this on to Chava and Gilla to take it from here.
Gilla, do you want to go first? Where is Gilla?
Gilla's here.
Okay.
You, Chava. I think you have what to share with us first.
Okay, it's just I want to point this out. I'm on my phone because the computer died, so I can't see people. I can't relate to messages. I can't respond to anything, so I just have to see you. So now I see you. Okay, so I do live out in the Negev, in the desert, and not a lot grows out here in terms of herbs that everyone knows, and it's in all the books and all of those things. I have two, though, that I go to all the time that grow consistently here, thank God, even with the tiny bit of rain that we get. And one would be nettle, and the other is mallow. And they always grow together. And because I've lived in my house for 20 plus years, I know summer after summer, winter after winter, spring after spring. I know what comes up. I know where it comes up. I know the exact spots that things come up and die and then replant themselves. So I have already gone through all of my plant ID. And as soon as they come up with the first rains, the kids and I will go outside and identify them and chew them. We just pick the leaves and chew them and talk about what do they taste like, and what do they feel like in your mouth. Nettles, you have to do it very carefully, right? Because they have spikes on one side of them, the leaves. And so for me, it's very local. Like Rivkah said, what if one day we don't have electricity or internet? But what if we don't have a credit card because our social score didn't match up with whatever we were allowed to do or not allowed to do? God forbid that would happen, but they talk about it. So going right outside your door for free is a huge bonus. It's medicine and it's food. So the first thing would be just eat it fresh once you've identified it, once you know what it is. One way to get to know these herbs is by putting them in your mouth. not waiting always. I mean, we will eventually, but waiting until they dry and waiting until we put them in a tincture and wait. All those things are wonderful, but to actually get to know the plant in its most basic, minimal form, most potent, and most friendly, because you're completely interacting with your mouth and the taste and the texture and everything of these plants. That was one of our favorite things to do after a rain, and then we let them spike up through the ground.
So, I live in South Florida, and if anybody is familiar with our environment, we don't get a lot of the more well-known and common herbs or weeds like that people get, in the Northern Hemisphere, Europe, Israel, Northern US. You go to into any park, in Northern US, and you have plantain growing all around. You have dandelions in the yard. And so in South Florida, it's a little more challenging. There are also a lot more non-edibles in South Florida, meaning a lot of plants look similar to plants that we know, but they are actually somewhat toxic or not edible at all. So the checking 3 resources, like Rivkah said, is so important. And that, for me, is because lookalikes. I remember one year thinking that I had found chickweed. I was so excited. I think I told Rivkah. And it even has that you pull, it has a thread in, which is one of the ways you ID chickweed. And its common name is, I think they call it chickweed, kissing cousins, tropical chickweed. But it's actually not chickweed. Luckily, this is an edible and has some similar properties to chickweed, but there are others that are totally not edible or medicinal that we can use. So I'm going to tell you something else that, in my opinion, is so important. We all use the common names or the folk names. Folk names are so important because they often give us an idea what the herb does. Like, for example, comfrey is in old Europe was called knit bone because it's helpful for bones. One of the things that it does. So the common names are often given and may differ or may be the same, but it's really important to look up the exact Latin name to make sure you have the same plant. Now, when I speak to you, even when I write things down, I use the common names because it's common and it just feels normal for us, and we're regular folk like everyone else, right? So we use the common names. We say yarrow, for example. I don't say, Achillea. So common names are used, but when we want to go and identify, we have to use the Latin name. And that way, sometimes that's kind of your third resource or third and a half resource. Really, really important. The other thing that Chava mentioned about, just tasting the herbs, which is so important, get a flavor, the ones that are edible. But I would take it a step further. Again, in South Florida, we have nettles for a very short time now in our winter months. And it's not common. Over the years, I have found in very, very few places. And when I do, whoever is with me, I make sure they get zinged. And I use the word zing and not sting, because some people might feel, oh my gosh, that stings. And it's usually a delayed zing as well. But it's almost like it's a zing. It's a little bit stingy, and it's a little bit, I just touched some electricity there. And in that zing, we get a lot of info all about this plant. And there is healing. When we chew a plant, there is something healing in there. When we get zinged by nettles, thank you, nettles, because we're getting a healing zing. People pay money to get stung by bees for chronic illnesses like arthritis, all kinds of things. And nettles can do pretty much the same. The other thing, for example, nettles, since we don't have it so often, when we do, I usually harvest the leaves, the seeds, and sometimes even the roots, and make a nice big decoction and offer whoever is with me or bring to friends, because it's an opportunity to share. So somebody will know the flavor. This is what nettles looks like. This is what it tastes like. Oh, the root tastes like this, or the leaves. And they learn, and we learn, and we can share. Nettles have a zing when they're fresh, but when they dry, they no longer have that zing. They're perfectly safe to touch, and you're not going to get hurt. I'm trying to think if I missed something. Oh, yeah. Get to know your local flora. So that could mean your own yard, your own driveway. Knowing 2 or 3 plants really well is better than knowing the names of 50. So get to know your local flora, from your driveway to the park, to your neighbor's yard, to a wild area, and enlist help. If you don't know an herbalist, look up someone who does foraging, or a naturalist, or a gardener, or somebody who's older and lived there for a long time and forages for plants. So these are ways that we can learn IRL, in real life. Rivkah.
Yeah, so getting a guide or someone who knows the plants is one of your 3 sources.
Yeah.
That's one of them. It doesn't all have to be a book or looked it up. No, like having a guide come with you is one of the 3 sources. In fact, if you ask the guide, oh, hey, how did you learn this? Can you tell me where you found this, what book it's in, or whatever it is? Then you can double check that, and that's your 3rd source. So absolutely, the 3 sources can come very, very quickly to you, especially now when we have the internet. We can get on that. What Gilla said, I just want to reiterate. It's so beautiful, and I just feel like it needs to be said again. The common name is so important, and the Latin name is so important. And the common names, like I told in my little story about Usnea, the common names can be the same. Old man's beard for both Spanish moss and Usnea. Okay, so using that as a source of identification, no, that's a no-go. Okay, you're going to need to confirm with the Latin name, and then you will see that that's 2 totally different plants that aren't even related. However, the common name will come in handy if you're in a situation where you're not an herbalist and you found say comfrey, and you ask someone, oh, what is this? And you know that it's comfrey because you've identified it, and they go, oh yeah, this is knit bone. We call this knit bone. Okay, and you go, oh, let's see, might be good for bones or knitting bones back together. Or someone finds yarrow. My yarrow. when I was an actress, we would have cast t-shirts and cast jackets and stuff. So I feel like I'm in the cast of yarrow now because I have the jacket. But anyway, if you find yarrow, okay, which Gilla referenced, Achillea millefolium, okay, there's different achilleas, and the millefolium comes from what appears to be many, many leaves. I actually just made a video about this plant, ironically, talking about this. But there's different, it's not many leaves, it's just 1 leaf. We can talk about that later if you want. But there's other achilleas, this is an aside, that grow in Israel. But Achillea millefolium is not one of them, unless you have the seeds and you're growing it in your own yard or something. It's not, when I say it doesn't grow in Israel, I mean it's not a wild weed. It's possible for someone who's not me to probably cultivate it in their yard, but for me it is not, among many other plants. But anyway, one of the common names of yarrow is nosebleed. And what do you think it's good for? What do you think it does? One of its many, many purposes. Yarrow is an amazing, amazing plant. We could spend the next 6 hours discussing yarrow. So yeah, super important, but you're gonna need that Latin name. You really need both. And if you can only have one and not the other, go for the Latin name, because you've got to be absolutely sure that this plant is what you think it is. Absolutely sure. Okay, so in this situation, so far, poop hits the fan. We're not herbalists. We go out, we identify the plant. And now, thanks to Chava and Gilla, we've talked about tasting the plant. So we taste it. We look at it with all five senses. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Gilla talked about the sting of nettle, but has anyone ever felt the softness of, say, sage or artemisia, like a wormwood, a Shiba or something, that soft, furry coating, okay? Make a note of those things because you'll start to recognize that there's different, you can group things by how they feel or smell or taste or touch or what they look like. Not always, but you can. There can be little shortcuts that you can make in your head to help remember different plants. So we're using all five senses when we encounter the fresh plant, and we can eat it, put it in our mouths and eat it and taste it great. You can also take that fresh plant and move on to step number 2, which is using it in like a kitchen format, let's say. So this could be putting the herb, the fresh herb, in a mug and pouring boiling water over it, adding a little bit of honey, and you've got a tea. Has anyone ever, this is very common in Israel, has anyone ever gone to a restaurant, visited a home or whatever, where they take some sprigs of typically spearmint leaves, it can be peppermint, put it in a cup, pour over the water, put a little honey in, and you have your mint tea. And the leaves are right in the cup. You can see it, and it's fresh leaves. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to dry it first. You just take the fresh plant, pour boiling water over it, let it steep for a bit. You can even cover your cup with your mug with a plate to keep the volatile oils, the essential oils in, and let it steep. Try it for 5 minutes and taste it. Put the cup back on. Give it another 10 minutes. Taste it again. See what you think. See what the difference is.
I see people doing that with olive leaves from their olive trees.
With olive leaves. I don't know who's talking right now. Who is talking?
Ita.
Oh, hi, Ita.
Ita. Hi.
Nice to meet you. Yeah. Okay. So yes, with olive leaves, whatever it is, take some time. Olive leaves are actually fun. That it's funny that you brought that up because depending on how long they steep, you can actually get a very oily tea from those leaves. Even though we get the oil from the olives on an olive tree, not from the leaves, which isn't totally true either, because some of those leaves get in there. I just did this, and they do get in there, and you do end up pressing them too. But that isn't where you're getting the oil from. Okay, so now you're using it as a tea. That's simple. But what about in the kitchen? So I make the famous Moroccan mint cake every Rosh Hashanah. So this is my version of honey cake because none of us like honey cake. And my husband comes from a Moroccan minhag. And so this Moroccan mint cake involves honey and sugar syrup and all those things Moroccan dishes have. But one of the things I do is I go pick some spearmint from my garden. I chop it up, a ton of it, like a cup and a half, and I mix it with some sugar and water. And that's how I make the syrup that's used in traditional mint Moroccan cakes that you prick holes all over the cake and then you pour the syrup over. So I'm using an herbal medicine, spearmint or peppermint could be used, right? I'm using a mint. Specifically, I'll say spearmint and peppermint because there's lots of mints, all edible, by the way, if it's a true mint. And I'm making a syrup and that's flavoring my food, but it also, all of the properties of mint, like it's a star with digestion issues and things like that. That's going into my food as well. And then when I'm done with the syrup, I have left over like these kind of sugar-soaked leaves, which I can garnish the cake with. And on top of that, I go and also get fresh mint and chop it up in little bits and I mix it into the batter of the cake. So I'm like chopping and bruising up those leaves and mix it into the batter of the cake. So there's 3 ways where my medicinal plant is now going in my cooking, in my cuisine, and we use it all the time. Have you ever made fish with some rosemary or something like that? So when you're looking into the medicinal properties of rosemary or whatever, maybe the easiest way to start using it and to try it would be in your cuisine, not even as a tea. Rosemary, you don't pop it in your mouth and chew it. The leaves are really leathery and tough. It's not so pleasant going down. Try it and see. but you can use it in cuisine as well as tea. So now like we've already opened the repertoire. And another way, which is now you're moving into more advanced, but it's not harder, is to make a tincture with the fresh herb. So I'm going to toss it over to the ladies to talk about tincture, and we can build on that.
Okay, well, I'll just show you. I have a tincture right here. I don't know if you can see that. That is my mallow root. So again, with mallow, I will go out and pick the leaves, and we will make like little patties, mix them up with flour, salt. That's about all you need, and fry it in a pan. That's the leaves if I'm going to cook with them. They will also go into a smoothie, anything with the leaves that's fresh. But when it's time at the end of the season, I will also dig up the roots. And the roots have saved many a animal and person in our house, thank God. They are very soothing, the roots. And so if my horses have colic, or if children have kind of a colicky feeling, things are stuck and they're not moving, it soothes all of the soft mucous membranes in our bodies, which would be the digestive system, and helps things slide through. So a tincture, I just take the fresh root, I chop it up. Here I didn't chop, but enough. And pour over it vodka. And now it's been sitting, let me see, I have a date on here. It's been sitting for about 5 months. And it's only because I haven't touched it, but I have a lot already that's already ready. So I use it whenever it's needed. I can also just make a tea from the roots, but since Rivkah was talking about tincture, I thought I'd show you. Tincture is an easy way for me to get something in someone without having to carry big jugs and jars. I can take my little dropper and I will add it to my animal's water. Yeah, there you go. I will add it to anyone's water, a cup of water, a cup of tea. All you need is a couple of drops, depending on which tincture you're using, which herb. But that's why it's so easy to carry it around. I put it in my pocket. I can put it on a shelf somewhere outside where I have all of my... Thank you for the demonstration. So that's what I personally like so much about tinctures, is you don't need a lot and it's very strong. And then you add it to another liquid or straight to your mouth like Rivkah just did. What are you taking over there?
Well, we'll get to that next because it's an elixir.
Oh,
and it's so
okay.
good. And that's why I took it straight on my tongue and didn't dilute it first.
Right. So these tinctures are, I make them from vodka, but you can also use any other alcohol, as long as it's over 40%, which in Israel, we used to have 50% alcohol, and now they've done away with that, but we're still getting away with 40%. So that would be one way, or one reason, I guess, to use the tincture form.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was.
maybe I don't know if you want to add to that, but maybe we can start moving into the elixir situation, which is super, super advanced. If tinctures are advanced, that doesn't mean hard to make. Then elixirs would be more advanced.
So I'm gonna send that over to you because I was actually gonna show an oil.
Okay, well let's so we can do the oil now, because oils can be made, it's your call, but oils can be made with fresh plants. So now we're like in the realm of fresh plant. Or especially for beginners, dried plant is often used, because sometimes the proportions can be off, where a fresh plant can hold a lot of water and it can become rancid in the oil. Whereas a dried plant has all the water evaporated out of it or taken out of it. And so you're not adding water into oil. And we know water and oil don't mix and all these things, we can get into it. So Gila, if you want to talk about doing fresh in oil, is that fresh? Oh,
No,
okay.
it's
So
not.
let's
It's
finish
dry.
the fresh and move to dried.
Okay, so I don't use a lot of fresh for oil because I don't have a lot of fresh growing around me. But one of the plants that I have in abundance and I wild harvest and wild craft is called Biden. And even when I use fresh, I don't put it straight in the oil like I would for alcohol for a tincture. I allow it to wilt slightly because as it wilts slightly, it reduces some of the moisture. And if we do a fresh plant in oil, it often does not come out as nice as if we use dry or semi-dry like wilted. So I have tried, and that's another thing that I think is so important to talk about. And that is there is no right or wrong. So just because I said it should be wilted or somewhat dry because you don't want all the moisture to mix with the oil, I'm also going to say you should probably try make a totally fresh one because there is no better way to learn herbs and any natural medicine making. It's like cooking. There's a little bit of art and there's some science there. And this is flavors as well. So I suggest try because that way you will see the difference and you will learn, okay, this one has a bit of moisture. This one came out nicer. And when we're using dried herbs, it's really important to make sure that they were freshly dried. They haven't been sitting around for years and years, and they're not moldy. They should smell good. You should be able to smell exactly what plant they are. And that way, you know, they still have their aromas, the aromatics, the medicinal healing properties. But essentially, this is a lavender. Look, you can see the little pieces maybe. This is actually a lavender oil, and it's in olive oil. And believe it or not, even though olive oil is so strong, when you open it up, you still should get a nice lavender aroma. Oh, yeah. So oils, we let them sit as well and macerate. We heat them. We can go into that later. We heat them very gently. We don't cook them. We want to extract the medicinal properties gently. And then we strain it. And we can use these oils on our skin. We can use them as chest rubs. We can use them, you know, for muscle aches and pains. We can use them for soft skin or dry skin. We can use them and further process them and make a salve. So I just wanted a little visual and introduction, and I'm going to let Rivkah go ahead with the elixir.
Okay, so we started to get into the realm of dried herbs because we tend to prefer them for oils, but it doesn't have to be. Some oils, like Gilla mentioned, actually need, and I'll take it a step further, some of them need to be actually cooked on a direct heat. And one of those, an example that comes to mind, is one of my special favorite plants that grows as a wild weed where I am, Inula viscosa, which is also called sticky fleabane. It has to do with extracting the resins from that plant. However, when Gila talked about heating, she typically, I'm putting words in her mouth for her, doesn't refer to putting it on a fire like you do a Inula viscosa. Just a gentle heat, which can be done by placing the jar in a window or letting the herbs be on kind of a low, you know, sunny area, low temperature, like the temperature is elevated, but, you know, low temperature crock pot, even something like that. But we can get into that more. But it can be done with fresh in those ways. Another thing that can be done with fresh herbs, this is just what you picked from your yard. You don't need an herb store. You don't need to dry them, just fresh herbs. is you take the tincture that Chava talked about and you add honey. You add honey. So some good local raw honey. Okay, let's think about honey for a second. Is honey an herb? My vote's for yes. And I'll tell you why. Because honey is manufactured by the bees, which Chava can talk about as a beekeeper, from the pollen of plants. And whatever the bees have been tasting from the herbs that they've been eating can flavor the honey, can and does flavor the honey and color the honey and create different types of honey. If you've ever been to like a farmer's market, sometimes they'll do a honey tasting and they'll say like, this is, clover blossom honey, and this is avocado blossom honey. And you get to taste the different ones and see how the texture, taste, color differs from place to place. And that's based on herbs. So it's basically herbal medicine that's processed through the bee's body. So when we're adding honey to a tincture, we're getting the medicinal properties of the plants that the bees ate to form the honey, and we're getting the medicinal properties of the honey. Now, how many of you suffer from allergies? Show of hands. Okay. If you have allergies, many times you're told to dose yourself with local honey from local bees, because the bees are kind of processing the potential allergens in the blooms or whatever that's I'm talking about seasonal allergies here, not dog allergies. That's not probably going to help. Might help you, but maybe not. Okay, so the bees are processing the different blossoms or whatever it is that's causing this allergic reaction or these allergies. And if you take some of their local honey, you can kind of like start to build up the tolerance that you need to deal with the actual blossoms outside that are growing in your area, which is really cool. So adding honey into your tincture adds many layers of medicinal healing to your preparation, as well as adds delicious taste to your preparation. So if you have a tincture and that tincture is just alcohol and your plant, you may end up having a very bitter plant. And I'm going to throw this back to Gilla for this, because she was just telling us about her bitter tincture that she so geniusly mixed with honey, which made it more sweet and palatable. Gilla, maybe you can share that.
So I have, for example, with me here, this is an elixir that I made. It's one of my personal favorites. In fact, I probably have too much of it. And I make them, when I make them, I make at least 2 jars, because 1 jar I taste every day, even before it's ready. So what we have here, and I'm doing this so you can see, it looks like herbs in liquid. You can't even see that there was honey there, because the honey actually liquefied, which is really cool. And so we make, maybe some of you know and have heard of onion honey, where we take onions and we put them in honey. A lot of people use onion honey and know about it. And I always tell everyone, when you do that, you're going to take this, and they tell me it's so hard to mix the honey in. Within an hour or 2, the honey is liquid, because it absorbs from the onion, and the onion, there's alchemy that goes on. So the same thing when we use an alcohol and honey, and when we add herbs into the mixture, it becomes an infusion. So you have the medicinal properties of the honey, you have the medicinal properties of the herbs, you have the alcohol interacting with the honey interacting with the herbs. And what happens is it's like alchemy. It's like a chemical, it's like a chemistry explosion of whoosh. And the flavor is what got me started. When I had little kids, a lot of tinctures are not very palatable. You could make them in glycerin, which is a whole other, another way of using a menstruum. And adding the honey gives it a little bit of that more palatable. So it's not totally sweet, and you still will taste my elixir to life L'chaim, it is a digest elixir. So it has some bitter herbs. Bitter herbs are what we use for digestion. Dandelion, yellow dog, all those delicious bitter herbs. We don't all have in today's day a palate for this very bitter. Even though the bitter flavor is part of the healing, the honey doesn't take it away totally. It's almost like you want to compare it to flavors in food. Some people like spicy and sweet. There's a flavor called umami, so the elixir is very similar in that it's got two flavors going for it, and that is a little bit bitter and the sweet. And then you have the alcohol. So there are layers to the flavoring, but it is so delicious. It brings out the flavors. You do get some of the bitter, but it's not bitter where your kid's going to be like, it's going to be like, the next flavor is going to be sweet, and the next, so, and it's so much easier to take, and you can take it by the spoonful. I usually suggest half a teaspoon or a teaspoon. I take it as is, but for kids, you can mix it in a little warm water. You can add to peppermint tea. There's just so many versatile ways to take this medicine, and it's a food as well. So yeah, elixirs. L'chaim, to life.
Yeah, they do kind of, depending on what you have, they can taste like a liqueur. So what I was taking when Chava asked me what I was taking, and this is separated a little. I don't know if you can see the separation. Gilla
Yes.
can explain why it separates like that. But anyway, I'll just shake it up. It's fine. This is a Kiva Rose Hardin recipe. If you want to search that herbalist, someone asked for a book list. So there you go. You can start searching there. This is my blackberry elixir. So one of the great things that Chava mentioned about tincturing was she said, I don't have to carry these big bags of herbs all over the place. Like I can just pour some of this off into a little jar, and I take this with me in the car, on the plane, in my backpack, wherever I want. Right. And it's quick, but not only that, it keeps for years and years and years. So if I have a fresh plant material, it's going to start going rancid, or it's going to mold, or it's going to get gross, or it starts drying out, or whatever it is. It doesn't keep forever, a fresh plant. But I can take a fresh plant, pour some type of alcohol over it, and now that plant is preserved for years, depending on the plant. Some plants you should change out, like shepherd's purse, for example, but you'll many times be able to know when the smell is off and things have changed, that maybe it shouldn't be used, or it's gotten too weak. But essentially this recipe right here, I have a blackberry bush. And so Kiva Rose's recipe is basically get some of the leaves, some of the berry, ripe berry and unripe berry, get the aerial parts. Aerial means above ground parts. Chop them up. You probably could throw in some root here too, to be honest. Okay, I don't like digging up roots of stuff that I like to see living, but with blackberry, it's just going to keep coming back. If you got it in your yard, you can probably part with a few roots. But anyway, you chop everything up, you pour the alcohol over it, you add honey over it. Proportions basically have to do with your size of jar and whatever. We use the simpler method. You can look it up. You're filling a jar, whatever size you have, and you're just covering it with vodka. And, for this size jar, I probably use maybe half a cup of honey, something like that. And it tastes like a liqueur. I mean, it tastes amazing. I could put this in a little shot glass and just sip on this and love it. But this is used, we talked about digestion. It is a bitter blackberry, especially when you've got those leaves and those unripe berries there. They are very bitter. However, this is specific, the whole digestive tract. So if you've got, if you're trying to heal the gut, if you've got maybe someone who's got chronic diarrhea or irritable bowel, even people who are dealing with hemorrhoids, just kind of healing the whole tract there. It's delicious. It's wonderful. It's so fun. And then elderberry. Many of us have heard about elderberry. Many people even know how to make an elderberry syrup. I talked about making the mint syrup for a cake, for a Moroccan cake. But many people who are just dabbling in herbs will go get berries from the elder tree, aka elderberries, and put some honey or sugar or some other sweetener and water, boil it down, and they will take a spoonful of that, and it's great, except it does go rancid, even if you're keeping it in the fridge. So mixing the berries or covering the berries with alcohol and making a tincture, and then adding a sweetener like honey, or not like honey, definitely honey, to that. You've got an elixir, an elderberry elixir, which Gilla told me she feels is even more effective than plain elderberry tincture. And I've found that to be true by leaps and bounds. And I keep both regular tincture and elixir of elderberry on hand, especially during the winter cold and flu season with my kids. Elderberries taste a lot like blueberries, so it has a very pleasant taste, especially for children. As far as tincturing, so we've talked about, so Gila mentioned the word menstruum. And I just want to deal with this word. And I know we maybe have about 10 minutes, I hope, Lowell, before we wrap up. But a menstruum is the solvent, the thing that you put the herb in to extract the properties of the herb. So if we're making a cup of tea, the menstruum is water. So I've taken my mint sprigs, I put it in a cup, pour water on it, cover it, drink it. Okay, the menstruum was water. In the case of an oil, we've talked about oils. We put the herb in the oil. We let it, macerate, put it in heat, whatever we're doing to extract the properties. We wait. Time is of the essence. And then in that situation, we can strain out the plant material, which is called the marc, the leftover plant material when you've strained it away from the menstruum. And the menstruum in that situation is the oil. We're making a tincture like Chava talked about. We have the herb, we pour vodka over it. The menstruum is vodka. In an elixir, we put vodka and honey over it. The menstruums are vodka and honey, because those are extracting properties. So some other menstruums that I want to throw out there that can be used with the fresh plant would be like a citrus juice. I have a special recipe for flea collars that I use to make flea collars for my cats. And I'm using herbs. The menstruum for my herbs is lemon juice. And for that recipe. Okay, so I'm not using vodka, like for whatever reason, both the lemon, the properties in the lemon, the healing properties in the lemon, and the juice, which extracts the properties, work really well for flea and tick stuff for animals. Okay, so lemon juice would be one for me. Beer, wine. In the old days, in the Middle Ages, they didn't necessarily have these vodkas. So they would just put the herbs in their bottles of wine or mead or beer. And that would be the menstruum and extract the properties. And then you would have these herbal beers. In fact, the original beers, which I keep putting this out there. If anyone wants to respond to this request, I have been working, I'm trying to negotiate with the new Culinary Institute of the Galilee about this. Going back to the original beers, a purpose of beers. The original beers were vitality drinks for men, so that they would be more virile in sex, war, all these things. And what they did was they would take herbs that are medicinally known for increasing male vitality, and they would use the beer as the menstruum, or ferment with, the beer, whatever was in the beer, if it's malt or whatever else they were using, ferment it together. And that it was an herbal brew, herbal vitality brew for men. That's what beer was. And we could do all kinds of beers. We could do fertility beers for women. We could do all sorts of things. So I'm here for it. If anyone any beer microbrewery wants to contact me, I'm down. Okay, so you've got your beer and wine. You've got vodkas. A friend of mine made like a passion fruit liqueur, and I didn't want to drink it like on itself. So I use that as a menstruum. Instead of vodka, I poured that over my plants. And now I've mixed the plants with whatever I wanted the qualities of passion fruit. So passion fruit has its own medicinal qualities. Okay. So the passion flower is like for lowering blood pressure, reducing stress and anxiety, different things like that. So I'm going to be blending it with other herbs, making a tincture with other herbs that have those same types of effects to increase the power. All right. And I'll let you know how that turns out at some point. You can use glycerin, which I've never done. So maybe the ladies can speak to. Water, honey. Gilla talked about witch hazel. She makes something. You can use oil. You can use vinegar. Those are all different types of menstruums, and they're used. We choose them based on our experience with the herbs, what goes well with other things. It's like a complex decision. But like Gila said, just play, just try different things. Try taking your lavender and using vinegar as a menstruum, and alcohol as a menstruum, and oil as a menstruum, and see what you get when you come out with that. Okay. So we've got the plant, we've got encountering the plant, we've got tinctures, elixirs, we've got everything we do with the fresh plant. The next step is dried. I don't even know if we have time to get into it, but when we're drying, we can do all these things and more. So the oils and the teas, you can use dried herb, like in a tea bag that you get from a store, that's dried herb. But you can also powder the herbs, and you can use the powdered herb for different medicinal things. So what's coming to my mind right now is go back to yarrow and nosebleed. So one of the ways yarrow was kept was they would dry it, powder it, then take some pinches of it when someone had a nosebleed, stick the dried powdered herb up that person's nose. It's okay if they inhale it. It's okay. Stick it up the nose, and it was a hemostatic. It would stop the bleeding. And that could be used also in other injuries that yarrow is so well known for. Like say you have a very deep cut on your leg or whatever, you could pack the powdered herb into that. Chava and Gila, maybe we need to wrap up, but if there's other things, I tried to like cram it all in at the end that you want to add to this, that would be good.
Okay, so first this is, if you can sort of see, this is chrysanthemum flowers, just the heads. So in the spring, out in the Negev, the entire Negev turns yellow, completely and totally covered with yellow. For the rest of the year, it was brown. And then in the spring, after the rains, the greens come up and they turn bright yellow. Fields are completely covered. For me, that's a message from Hashem that we need this thing. For whatever reason, he gives it to us in a beyond abundance, like beyond. No one could ever get to, picking all of them there. And they're all looking at you. They follow the sun and they watch you. What I do is then I will go and pick the heads and dry them. And then I have them all year long. And they're just sitting here and I'll make tea from them. One more thing that Rivkah didn't mention with all the different menstruums is milk. When I milk my goats and my sheep, so I can make any kind of thing from that milk. Either you heat up the milk. What is chai? In India, they use these very warming spices and they cook it in milk. And the milk is then the menstruum, and the milk becomes herbal. You can take medicinal edible mushrooms and also heat them up in milk. And then the milk can also become cheese. And then it has those herbal leaves or mushrooms or whatever inside the cheese. And then the cheese becomes medicinal. So there's so many places to play with this. You can read the rules, but it's good, I think Gila said the other day, to break the rules and try your own thing as long as it's safe and you know what goes with what and what you're eating and all of that. But yeah, experimenting and having fun.
Gila, you have anything to add?
I think we pretty much said it all. I mean, we could probably go on for hours, but I think we gave a little taste of things and a lot of food for thought. And hopefully some ideas that will bring more questions and be inspiring.
Can we ask questions?
Yeah, just one moment. I just want to, I guess, recap then. I personally think when the poop hits the fan, people could now know to identify, encounter the plant, use it fresh, and make different things out of it. Tincture, elixir, oil, and then dry it and do those same things. Like already that's the foundation. And that's what we wanted to cover. And hopefully you'll keep coming back to this episode and listening to it again and again. And, it's really all you need. If you download it to your computer, when the poop hits the fan, you can just watch this and know step by step how to bring in herbal medicine right now. And I guess my very last thought is every plant is edible once. So please, 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 when you're breaking the rules, make sure you're not breaking them with regards to what is a poisonous plant and what is a non-poisonous edible plant. That is not where you break the rules. Poison is poison. Plants can kill you. So yeah, keep that in mind. Okay, I'd like to open up to Q&A, but I'm going to stop the recording. If for some reason, why am I not recording? Maybe I'm recording. Hang on.
You are recording. It is recording.
I am recording. Okay, let me stop. And usually we stop the recording so that people can have privacy. So I'm going to stop here.